So now we're zooming in on part 3 of chapter 3, which is digestion, absorption, and metabolism. So we've just finished talking about some digestive disorders, and now we're going to touch a little bit on alternative feeding methods. So if an individual cannot take adequate food or fluid by mouth, the first step is to feed them by enteral or tube feeding. Enteral or tube feeding requires the patient to either have a tube that goes through the nose or might go directly into the stomach area. And that tube is going to contain partially digested food, usually in liquid form. That's going to be the first best method of feeding an individual that can't take in adequate food by mouth because it keeps the digestive system going. We really want all those smooth muscles of the digestive system to keep working, the hormones to keep connecting with the brain, and the enzymes to keep being produced. On the other hand, if the digestive system doesn't work for some reason, then we have TPN, or total parenteral nutrition. TPN is given intravenously. So a dietitian in a hospital might specialize in tube feeding or TPN. This requires a lot of calculations of exactly how much nutrient each individual needs. So lots of calculations based on, height, weight, activity level, disease, special considerations of drug-nutrient interactions, and those sorts of things. So it's a line of nutrition that not a lot of people think of, but can actually be, a whole career in alternative feeding methods. So let's talk a little bit about transportation and metabolism. When we look at the transportation of nutrients around the body, the main component of that is the cardiovascular system. So first, oxygen-poor blood that reaches the heart from the rest of the body is pumped through the pulmonary arteries into the capillaries of the lungs. In the capillaries, oxygen from inhaled air is picked up by the blood, and carbon dioxide is released into the lungs and exhaled. Then, oxygen-rich blood is inhaled and returns to the heart from the lungs via the pulmonary veins. The oxygen-rich blood is then pumped out of the heart into the arteries that lead to the rest of the body. Then, in the capillaries of the body, nutrients and oxygen move from the blood to the body's tissues, and the carbon dioxide and other waste products move from the tissues to the blood to be carried away. This happens when we go through aerobic metabolism in terms of the oxygen exchange that happens at the mitochondria of the cell. The oxygen-poor blood then returns to the heart via the veins, and then we go back to number 1. That blood reaches the heart and then is pumped through the arteries to the lungs and exhaled. Hepatic portal circulation is going to be really important too. So all water-soluble substances are absorbed in the small intestines, the stomach, and the large intestines, mostly in the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum of the small intestines. And then they head through the venules to veins, then to the hepatic portal vein and to the liver. The liver is really going to be where everything is detoxified, and it's where it determines where our vitamins, minerals, etc. need to go as well. Metabolic pathways are a series of reactions needed to transform food into a final product that can then be used by the body. There are 2 types of metabolism. There's catabolism. Catabolic pathways release energy trapped in chemical bonds. So we're going through a catabolic process if we're running, for example, and expending a bunch of energy. Energy from the catabolic reactions is converted to ATP, and ATP is considered the energy currency of the cell. When we consume calories, we're going to be able to create more ATP. So when we talk about carbs having 4 calories per gram, protein having 4 calories per gram, fat having 9 calories per gram, and alcohol having 7 calories per gram, those calories can then be converted into ATP. So the carbs, the protein, and fat are considered substrates for that. When we talk about vitamins and minerals and their involvement in catabolism, they're going to act more as cofactors and coenzymes and things like that that allow us to extract the energy that we consume from carbs, protein, and fat. When we look at ATP, ATP has these catabolic pathways where ATP is produced and used as fuel. And then we also have anabolic pathways where nutrients are used as raw materials. So an example of that, that's a kind of a fancy way of saying that when we eat a lot of fat and carbs, for example, we need somewhere to store them. So they can be used as raw materials to build structures in our body, such as muscles or as fat, or replenish anything that we burn throughout the day. So we have constantly this process of catabolism and anabolism happening. The ATP is going to be needed for muscle contraction, kidney function, and just any other work of the body. The anabolic pathways are going to be needed to replace anything that was broken down. And if we're meeting our EER, or estimated energy requirement, then we have kind of a similar balance of the catabolism and anabolism going on at the same time. When we look at metabolizing nutrients, we use cellular respiration. So as you can see here, the substrates that can be used for cellular respiration include glucose, which is going to be the end product of carb digestion, fatty acids, or the end product of fat digestion, lipid digestion, and then amino acids, which are the end product of protein digestion. Glucose can create a little bit of ATP without the presence of oxygen, which is called glycolysis. Otherwise, we have glucose and amino acids and fatty acids producing ATP through aerobic metabolism, which is the conversion of acetyl-CoA to the citric acid cycle to the electron transport chain to result in a number of ATP molecules that can then energize our cells. When we look at the elimination of metabolic waste, there are a variety of ways that we can eliminate waste. So the first way is never absorb it. So that would be waste that's excreted through our feces. So anything that's excreted through our feces has never been absorbed, or you can almost think it's never entered the body. Then nutrients that enter the body can be excreted in a variety of other ways. So we can excrete through the urinary system. So if you've ever taken a multivitamin and then your urine has turned bright yellow, that's going to be the color of riboflavin as it's excreted through the urinary system. We also can excrete some substances, wastes, through the integumentary system, so through the skin by sweating and things like that. And then also we can exhale it, through the lungs as well. So a variety of excretion pathways. So that's the end of chapter 3. We'll get much more into our metabolism and also digestion and absorption of each individual nutrient as we move on to chapters 4 through 12. Chapter 4 is going to be on carbohydrates, so you might want to go back to some of these slides to review basics of metabolism and basics of digestion and absorption as we get into a little bit more specifics on carbohydrates in the next chapter.